Most people believe Christianity was imposed on non-Western nations through colonialism, military power, and missionary coercion. But there is one country that demolishes that entire narrative. In the 1780s, a group of Korean scholars got their hands on a single Catholic book. No missionary had ever set foot in Korea. No priest, no bishop, no European had crossed that border with a Bible. These men read the book, debated its arguments against the most sophisticated philosophy in East Asia, and concluded on their own that Catholic teaching was true. They baptized one another. They founded a church. And over the next 80 years, more than 10,000 of their countrymen were tortured and killed rather than deny what those scholars had discovered through reason alone. The book was Matteo Ricci's Tianjushi, and the term they used for God was Cheonju, meaning Lord of Heaven. This is the story of the only nation in history that evangelized itself, and what their blood still says to you right now. Here is the question you need to sit with. If Catholic truth is genuinely universal, if it can be known by reason in any culture, and not just inherited through Western tradition, then why did it take a group of Confucian scholars in an isolated kingdom to prove it? And what does it mean that they proved it not with arguments alone, but by dying? Think of it this way. Imagine a group of brilliant scientists on a remote island with no contact with the outside world. A bottle washes ashore containing a single scientific paper describing the theory of gravity. The scientists read it, test it against everything they already know, and conclude this is true. When the mainland government orders them to reject the theory, they refuse, because you cannot unknow what reason has shown you. Some of them die rather than deny what they have discovered. That is what happened in Korea, except the theory was Catholic theology and the scientists were Confucian scholars. If you're interested in deepening your faith, hit like and tell me where you're watching from. Consider subscribing to stay rooted in Catholic truth. Support our videos, team, and tools, link in description, or scan the QR code on screen. But where does this teaching actually come from? The foundation is Scripture itself. In the Gospel of John chapter 1 verse 9, we read that Christ is the true light who enlightens everyone coming into the world, not just those born into Christian families, not just those visited by missionaries, everyone. St. Paul says the same thing in Romans chapter 1 verses 19 through 20, that God's invisible qualities have been clearly perceived in the things that have been made, so that all people are without excuse. The Catechism anchors this at paragraph 36 through 38, teaching that God can be known with certainty by the natural light of human reason from created things. This is not a minor Catholic teaching. The First Vatican Council declared in De Filius that if anyone says God cannot be known by natural reason, let him be anathema. That is how seriously the Church takes this claim. And Korea is the historical proof. The story begins in the 1770s during the late Joseon dynasty. The Korean scholars belonged to the Silhak movement, a reform group seeking practical knowledge beyond rigid Neo-Confucian orthodoxy. When they encountered Ricci's text, they found something extraordinary. Ricci had written his masterwork not as a catechism, but as a philosophical dialogue, using Confucian categories to present Catholic truth. He argued that belief in a personal creator God was compatible with, and indeed the fulfillment of classical Confucian insight. The concept these scholars already honored, Cheon, the mandate of heaven, prefigured what the Church teaches as divine providence in the Catechism paragraph 302 through 308. The Confucian sense that heaven orders all things was real as far as it went, but it could not go far enough on its own. It pointed toward a personal God who not only governs but loves. Justin Martyr recognized this same pattern centuries earlier when he wrote in his second apology that whatever has been well said belongs to us Christians. He called these scattered truths the Logos Spermatikos, seeds of the word planted in every culture. The Second Vatican Council echoed this in Ad Gentes 11, teaching that the Church recognizes seeds of the word latent in national and religious traditions. Korea is the most dramatic case of those seeds bearing fruit. In 1784, one of those scholars, Seung-hun, traveled to Beijing, was baptized by a Jesuit priest, and returned to Korea to baptize his companions. The Korean Catholic Church was born, founded entirely by lay people. No foreign missionary would enter the country for another 11 years. So what does this mean practically for you today? It means that the Confucian virtues those scholars honored were not destroyed by their conversion, they were fulfilled. Consider the Confucian ancestral rites called Jesa. These rites expressed something genuinely sacred: gratitude to the dead, communion across generations, the instinct that our departed loved ones remain present with us. The striking thing is that Jesa looks remarkably like the Mass. Setting a table of food offerings parallels the preparation of the altar, bowing before the ancestral tablet mirrors genuflection before the Blessed Sacrament. The communal meal after the rite foreshadows Holy Communion. Korean Catholic theologians have argued that Jesa was a preparation for the gospel in East Asia, just as Jewish temple worship was in the Near East. The Mass fulfills what Jesa only gestured toward: real communion with the dead through Christ, who has conquered death itself. The Council of Trent taught in session 22 that the Mass is a true sacrifice offered for the living and the dead. What Korean families were reaching for across that ancestral table, the Eucharist actually accomplishes. Now, many people assume that anyone who converts to a new religion must have been pressured or manipulated into it, but the Korean scholars converted against every social pressure imaginable. Catholicism was illegal. It was punishable by death. It required refusing the ancestor rites, which was the most devastating social act possible in Joseon society. There was no social incentive to convert. There was only the rational conviction that what they had found was true. And consider this: the Korean Catholic community eventually realized they needed ordained clergy and valid sacraments. They voluntarily submitted to Rome and petitioned for priests. Their lay origins did not lead them away from the institutional church, it led them straight to it. Grace perfects nature, as Aquinas taught. It does not bypass it. If this story is challenging the way you think about the faith, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Some will say that Christianity was still imposed because the books were written by a European Jesuit. But this confuses the vehicle of truth with the origin of truth. The Pythagorean theorem is not Greek simply because a Greek first formulated it. Ricci presented Catholic theology using Confucian philosophical categories, a language the Korean scholars already spoke fluently. They evaluated the arguments, not the cultural packaging. They were converted by reason, not by European prestige or military power. Korea was a deliberately isolationist kingdom hostile to foreign influence. The Vatican itself recognizes the uniqueness of the Korean founding. In 1984, Pope John Paul II traveled to Seoul for the first canonization ever held outside of Rome and canonized 103 Korean martyrs, declaring the Korean Church unique in all of Christianity for its lay origins. Others will argue that dying for a belief does not prove it is true, and they have a point. Catholic theology does not claim martyrdom mechanically proves truth, but the Korean case has a feature that sets it apart. These were not people raised in the faith from birth who died out of cultural loyalty. They were intellectuals who adopted Catholicism through sustained rational inquiry as adults, with no Christian background and every worldly reason to walk away. They weighed the arguments, concluded Catholic teaching was true, and then maintained that conclusion under torture. As the Catechism teaches at paragraph 2473, martyrdom is the supreme witness to the truth of the faith. It does not force belief, but it eliminates the easiest dismissals. When someone dies, rather than deny a claim, the question of sincerity is settled. The colonialism narrative also deserves an honest answer. The Joseon government's concerns about foreign influence were not paranoid, but the historical record is clear. The Catholic faith arrived in Korea through Korean scholars who independently sought it out, studied it, and chose it. The first priest to enter Korea was Chinese, not European, and he came because Korean Catholics repeatedly petitioned for ordained clergy. The French missionaries who later entered came at Korean invitation, not by colonial design. So where does this leave us? It leaves us with a story that should change how you understand your own faith. The Confucian search for moral truth prefigured the fullness of revelation in Christ. The ancestral rites foreshadowed the communion of the Mass. And the Korean martyrs fulfilled the pattern of every witness who has laid down their life since Stephen. Here is what you can do this week. Read the Gospel of John, chapter 1, slowly, and ask yourself whether you believe that Christ truly enlightens every person. Pray for the intercession of the 103 Korean martyrs, especially St. Andrew Kim Taegon, Korea's first priest, who was beheaded at age 25 after saying, "It is for him that I die. My immortal life is now beginning." Go to Mass this Sunday and remember that the altar you kneel before is the fulfillment of every table humanity has ever set for its beloved dead. If this helped you, share it with a friend, subscribe, and check out our web app for daily Catholic resources and soul search. Truth does not need an army. It only needs someone willing to read, to reason, and to refuse to look away.